I'm Chris Como, and I'm here with Dr. Sasho MacKenzie, and we're taking a deep dive on how research can help your golf game. The relationship that's keeping the face from squaring exists, but now you're doing it from a more inside out direction of the path.
Right.
So now all of a sudden you have an open face with a very inside out club path in a sense. And that's
Right.
even more right.
So you could still have someone like an Adam Scott who has a very pretty swing, very on plane look, right? Everybody would agree. Perfectly on plane. So go up and pretend you're going to be Adam Scott. Just
It's a big ask.
just take whatever. Just
All
go
right.
up the top of it just so I can demonstrate. Right. So his shaft might look like it never changes plane or pitch, right? It's perfect. But we can't see how he's manipulating that force vector. He's a guy who actually, his hands through impact go so hard left. So I can surmise, without measuring, I can guess it. He's actually applying a force that's much steeper, right, than the way the shaft is. So even though the shaft is staying on plane, he's manipulating the direction that force is being applied. So he's still getting this effect.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to do like a Tommy Fleetwood with his iron who
Right.
really does that, or John Rahm or a Brooks Koepka with that really quick aggressive move,
Yeah.
or Ryan Moore. You don't have to be doing that, right? There's two elements. There's the force that you're applying, which we can't see. I kind of get used to after doing measurements and seeing the motions, I can kind of guess where it's applied.
Yeah.
But you got the force, and then you have the location of where the shaft is.
Right.
Now, most golfers apply similar-ish force patterns, good golfers. So it can be easier to say, I'm just going to put the club in a slightly different position and swing hard, swing away.
Right.
What I would say about that is for a good player, it allows you to swing with less muscular effort, feels easier, and still square the face.
Right, and that's where what you're asking about, like the golf instruction world. This is where when it has that relationship, you can see this thing kick out just a little bit late. Some people talk about getting the club in front of you or the shaft steepening later. It's got that effect, and this is part of what squares the face up. So oftentimes people will maybe add a little bit of this flexion to help square the face.
Yep.
But you don't necessarily have to do that. There's plenty of great golfers who actually keep a little bit of that.
Zach Johnson?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
So, and then they will potentially square the face up more through that steepening late.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is where there's so many different variations, but if you understand these principles, you can apply them in a variety of different ways and create a variety of different looking swings that still work.
And I can't stress enough, the lead hand only swing to feel it. You want to be able to feel it,
Yeah.
right? You don't need to
Exactly.
measure this stuff. It's that feeling of most good tour players, good players, they don't have a sense that I need to square the face. They swing hard and it happens. That was brilliant.
Kind of flush that. I didn't swing hard, but I felt the relationship.
No, and let's deep dive in that for a second.
Okay.
All right, so just get to like a shaft parallel downswing with lead arm only. Yeah, and just kind of pause right around here.
Oh,
So here's the
parallel,
round.
sorry.
If we actually showed a slow-mo video, you're going to have about 60 degrees of forearm supination from here to impact in about 0.04 seconds. You are not strong enough to do that on your own. That's why it's super helpful to have that coming, that effect that we're talking about, the passive torque that I call it, helping you square it.
And that's how it felt. It did not feel like there was any effort to square that club face.
That was an awesome shot.
Thank you. That was good. I've done it before, but okay. So cool. We have a better understanding of what the club needs to do, the relationship of the club to our arms, and the force we're putting on it. If I were to throw a ball, right? Like the first thing I would need to do is like learn kind of the release part of it, and then if I were to throw it a little bit farther, I could add some more to it by stepping into it, right? I could step into it and throw a ball a bit farther once I got the release part first.
Yep.
I think we got the release part when it comes to the golf swing, at least a little bit,
I
right?
get where you're going, yeah.
Okay, how do we use maybe our interaction with the ground, our feet, our legs to add a little bit more to the club head? You've done some research that I think has some pretty good correlations to that.
Yeah. Okay, let's take big picture for a second to understand, why do we even need to think about the ground? So if you did a great video of jumping off the diving board that was based on us talking
Yeah.
a long time ago.
Long time ago.
You still were able to swing the club, I'm guessing. Let's say is that a 7-iron?
Yep.
Let's say your 7-iron club head speed's 92 miles an hour.
Okay.
That might be a little bit,
Whatever.
that's all right, that's
Fine.
good. Yeah, 92 miles an hour. You could probably still swing it at 55, 60 coming off the diving board, right? In that scenario, you have no angular momentum in your system. No momentum in your system.
No ground reaction force because I'm in the air. There's no connection to the ground.
Right, but you're still able to use your muscles to generate energy and get that out to the club.
Yeah.
But the total angular momentum in the system doesn't change. The club's going to go one way, you're going to go backwards, and that's really a limiting factor, right? So when we start talking about, we get past the release and think about, well, how can we get some more stuff out to the club, that's where we got to talk about, well, what are we doing with the ground?
We're creating more stuff to even get to the club.
That's
right. The first part is how do we get whatever we have to the club? I think that's what we just did. Now it's how do we maybe create a little bit more stuff to eventually transfer to the club.
That's right. So it's helpful to get some angular momentum into the body, not start at zero, and that's how we use the ground.
Okay.
Maybe the simplest way to talk about this is it can get pretty complicated,
sure.
Lots of planes of rotation, but let's talk about like in the, what I would call in the frontal plane.
Okay.
Like doing cartwheels.
Yep. It's like this. When you say frontal plane, you're saying movement in this direction.
Right. When we swing a golf club, it's kind of at an angle to the ground, right? We're not swinging it perfectly like a Ferris wheel, and we're not swinging it perfectly horizontal. So we need some angular momentum in the body in a horizontal plane and in a vertical plane. This like doing a cartwheel. So let's just focus on the cartwheel part, right? And it's probably more applicable hitting an iron because our swing plane could be like 65 degrees or something, a little more upright.
So the more vertical the plane is, the more of the cartwheel direction would be contributing to that momentum that's getting to the club.
That's right. So we want to somehow use the ground to get angular momentum into the system, and then that's where the release is so key, because then we want to get that out to the club.
Right.
Okay. And are you good at balancing a club on your finger?
Not really. I don't know.
Well, this is fun. I want to try it.
All right.
Okay. So this would be good.
Okay.
In order to add angular momentum into this club, so if you try to balance it and don't let it move.
Okay.
You did it. Perfect.
That's all I need.
So let's imagine you were holding it. I'm going to hold it for you. Let's imagine you're holding it perfectly still.
Okay.
Imagine my fingers aren't on there. Okay. So right now, the center of mass is lined up with, the center of mass is somewhere, or lined up with the force vector you're applying.
Okay.
And if those two things stay lined up, then the club's not going to rotate. This will be better. This will be better. But just find the balance point under your finger.
Okay.
This is way better. Okay. If the force you're applying goes through the center of mass of the club, then we get no torque, no rotation. If we want to add angular momentum into this club to make it rotate, I'm just going to slide the point of force application away from that center mass. So now we got force vector up here, center mass out here. They're not lined up. We're going to add angular momentum into this club.
Yep.
There we go.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
We need to do that with our bodies from the force from the ground.
Okay.
So it's not a club anymore, it's us, but we still have a center of mass.
Yeah.
Right? So if you take your stance, pretend you're going to hit a golf ball. Right now, if you're perfectly still, you're not rotating, right? That's because your center of mass is actually exactly lined up with what's called your center of pressure, the average spot that you're applying force.
Okay.
So you got a force underneath pushing up underneath this foot, force underneath that foot. The average is right here, and that is exactly pushing through your center of mass. If it wasn't, you'd be rotating.
Yeah.
But we need some rotation to then get it out to the club. So we got to start getting the location of where that force is being applied moved away from your center of mass so that we can add that rotation. I like to see flowing rhythmical swings. So some people might say, if you have a little bit of motion, maybe that makes it tougher to make contact. You know what? The golf swing is so complex anyway. All these joints rotating. We had a quarter-second downswing. That little bit of lateral motion you might have in a swing, like a Brooks Koepka or a Sam Snead, I think that shouldn't give you issue with contact, but it's going to do a lot to help you create speed.
Yeah.
We're watching Kyle Berkshire the other night, and he's got that awesome rocking motion, right?
Yeah.
That's where he's feeling separating the center of pressure from the center of mass. So that force vector is not going to be passing through the center of mass.
Yep, absolutely. And I've even seen Ricky Fowler recently doing kind of a little bit of a step, and I think he's doing some stuff with maybe John Tillery, and they're incorporating a little bit of that motion of the feet, and sort of having a synchronization of that to the club head.
Yeah. Okay, so if you go to the top, let's think about downswing only.
Okay.
We don't need to get boring. So if you go to the top, and let's say you're loaded up on your right side. So here's the sequence, then maybe we can dive into it a bit more.
Loading up on my right side doesn't mean I have to make this dramatic movement of my body over to the right side.
No, even the fact that your arm's over here and was over there, your center of mass, your weight, has moved this way.
Yeah.
A little bit. We only need to move a little bit. And the key on the downswing, because we want rotation, so if you're at the top and the force you're applying from the ground is going through your center of mass, right? Because you're not rotating right now, we're not going to add motion. We need a force vector to shift on this side of the center of mass so we get that rotation.
So from here to go
Right,
way.
without your mass moving.
Yep.
If that's the club, right, and if I move together, I don't get rotation. I need that direction that I'm applying that force to shift ahead of the center of mass so I get that rotation.
So the non-rotation version of it would be center mass goes with that pressure shift.
That's a slide. No good. Yeah.
that's something where it's shifting, but my center of mass isn't necessarily going with it.
Right. You do need to apply force this direction. So you push off that back foot so that eventually your center of mass will move this way. But what you do even faster is shoot your center of pressure this way. The center of pressure is the average spot that vertical force is coming out of the ground, right? And that's 100% determined by how hard you're pushing with each foot. So there's a really neat piece of research that I found, very high correlation between how much force you're putting into the ground, or how much force the ground's pushing back up to you underneath your lead foot at shaft vertical downswing.
Okay.
So if you get to that position, so let's say you go to the top, right, and pause just for a second. So imagine we pause it. I need your center of pressure to go this way fast, right? And so what it turns out is that at this point in the swing, we want that center of pressure to have shot all the way over here so that your center of mass is back behind it. And we're adding that rotation into the system, right? And so if you think, okay, well, how do I get the center of pressure over here? Well, I need to be applying less force with that foot and a ton with this one, right? So I want to see a huge spike in the force underneath that foot at that point in time.